What are we doing with names like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Luis Robert in 2025? Today, Matt and I are talking about risers and fallers when it comes to hitters for next season on today's action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Here, as always, with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane, and you can find him on Twitter at Matthew_Ane. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings or reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you could do that for us. And if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It will subscribe you to the channel and give you a notification every time we drop a new episode. And lastly, most importantly to Matt and I, guys, give us a chance on the Subtext platform. Through Subtext, it's an in-depth, personalized experience through text messaging alerts right to your phone, offering so much more than we can in this 30-minute podcast. And we are now heading into off-season mode, and just come join us on Subtext and have a lot of fun. We're going to be doing so much cool stuff there. If you are interested, link in bio. Real quick, this episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball's rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And all right, guys, we're officially, almost done with the regular season for mostly everybody. I know there's a couple of stragglers, that are stuck playing this week, like myself. But we are still taking a look forward to 2025 because we know all of you, may not have made it to the championship. And last week, if you joined me, I did an episode where I was talking about some risers and fallers for, next season when it came to pitchers, specifically starting pitchers. And this week I got Matt with me, so it's going to be a lot more fun, a lot more action-packed. We're doing bats. We're doing bats this week. And man, I think the first one's obvious. I don't know if he's the biggest riser when we're talking about per where they were drafted exactly, but I think he's going to be the biggest impactful player. So let's talk about Elly De La Cruz.
Oh yeah, this is a favorite of mine. Dom was not a true believer.
I got him in one of my keeper leagues.
I mean, if we go back to all our mock drafts, you're like, I wouldn't pick him there.
Come on. Somebody fact check that. I was taking him in like the third round everywhere. I did like Elly.
You were like,
I did.
I'd rather have O'Neal Cruz.
No. O'Neal Cruz is going like the 8th. I took both of them. I actually, so real quick, anyone, a little bit about me. I have another keeper league where I have O'Neal Cruz, Elly De La Cruz, and Dylan Cruz, and my team name is Cruz Missiles Engage. So I am a fan. I do have to stand my ground, and I do like Elly. I am a big Elly guy. You did like him more. I'll give you that. But I do like me some Elly.
Okay, whatever. I know we'll fact check. I know I'm going to be right anyway. But anyway, Elly De La Cruz. So I love this dude. We all knew this coming into the offseason. If you're new to this show, you'll hear why. I saw this coming, right? I saw the season that was coming. Actually, the only thing that kind of surprised me was the power numbers just weren't there as much as I thought they would be. I figured he'd probably be like a 30 home run guy this season. But hey, it takes a little bit of time to adjust. But, it is what it is. Elly De La Cruz was super successful, great season, and I think he's probably going to be a top 3 pick next year. Maybe that's a little bullish, but I mean, based off of the stolen base floor, the power of at least, I think, a 30 home run upside for next year, and a 260, I think a 270 batting averages in his future. And with the team just performing and growing as a whole, with CES having a full season next year and other players coming up next year, feeling that with that team actually just being healthy, the ribbies and runs potential shall go up. I think that's inevitable, right? Positive regression is due for the Reds. So with Elly De La Cruz, I think that he also shows a lot of what Bobby Witt did in his first full season, right? Even though, it's not the same track just based off of the fact that Elly De La Cruz had a half season and Bobby just had, his full-blown rookie season, but there's a lot of similarities. Power was down, didn't hit the 30 home runs. He had 20, but had 30 stolen bases, batted about 254. And, ribbies and runs, on the similar end, right? Royals weren't a team that you would count on for counting stats either, both runs and ribbies, and the stolen base potential of both players are there. And then batting average a little bit lower than expected. Now, even though Elly De La Cruz isn't known for like the wide range batting average in his profile, just based off of what he's done last year and this year, but you look at the minors, he's hit 297, he's hit 304, 296, 285. I'm not saying he's going to be that kind of hitter at the end of the day. I think 270 is a true, expectation for Elly De La Cruz once he gets his stride, which I think will be next year. You mix that in with literally, I won't even say he's going to repeat this stolen base number, probably more like 50, 55, which is still astronomical Bobby Witt upside. And then you add in the 30 to 40 home run power upside, which I think that step forward will be next year. This kid's going to be a locked and loaded, top 3 pick. I'm a huge fan of Elly De La Cruz. A lot of stuff backs it up too. I'm giving a long take. I apologize. But the WOBA is at 334. The slug is at 442. The average exit velocity is at 92 miles an hour. He's barreling about 12.8% of the time, creating hard contact at 45.9% of the time. Launch angle is at 35.9% of the time. And his bat speed is absolutely elite. The things I just wish he would improve on would be how much he chases, how often he whiffs, and just the strikeouts in general. It's an astronomical number of 210 strikeouts so far on the season. If he's even able to dial back some of that, walk a little bit more, we're going to see that 271 batting average. I think that everything else kind of points in the up arrow for power and all the other stats that I think will come with Elly De La Cruz, and the sprint speed and everything else is super elite that's already showing out. Elly De La Cruz locked and loaded for next year.
So I can keep my take super short and sweet, man, because you covered pretty much everything there. I fully agree. Every single thing. There's one thing actually I might surprise you and others here. I think the speed goes in a different direction. I think he can steal more bases next year, and I'll tell you why. He's actually in the 100th percentile when it comes to sprint speed, and I have the list of the fastest players in the league up. Bobby Witt's number 1, Johan Rojas number 2. Elly De La Cruz tied for 3rd with Victor Scott and PCA, Pete Crow Armstrong, if you're not familiar. So I think the sky is the limit for Elly. I think next year it's an easy 30-30. I think the power is going to be interesting to see where it goes because, as Matt said, I am surprised at the not very low. It's 25 home runs. But for Elly, I was definitely expecting 30 at least. So I think next year, 35 – 70 plus for Elly, I think is definitely in the cards. Batting average, as Matt mentioned, is going to be key there. If he takes
70 plus home runs, that'd be ridiculous.
Steals. No, 30. Okay. No, 30. I said 30, 70. Yeah, no, 30 homers. Yeah, 70 steals. Yeah, but when it comes to batting average, that's where it's going to be key to which direction he goes. If he takes the step in the right direction, I think the strikeouts are going to be an issue. It might be an issue going in the right direction. 210 strikeouts leading the league is tough. With 69 walks is nice though too. So if he goes to the 270, 275 range, steals are going to go up the limit. But if he does wind up going the other direction, which we saw in the short stint last year for Elly, 98 games, 235 batting average, goes that way, I could see where Matt said the steals might dip instead of going up. But Elly De La Cruz, one of the best players in the game, definitely a first rounder, high end first rounder next year. Let's try and sneak in one more guy real quick. A faller. We're going to go riser, faller, kind of how I did it last week. Ozzie Albies. Interesting one. Banged up a lot this year. When he was on the field, not super productive, 27 years old. I think it has a lot to do with injuries, but here's the thing, guys. Just because a guy's a faller and we're talking about them as a faller, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't like them. Ozzie Albies last year was coming off the board as the 19th overall bat, 21st overall pick. Kind of high if you ask me. That's somebody, Matt, I can definitely say I wasn't willing to pay that price for. But just tough for me. I think next year if we get him as the number 3-4 second baseman, I'm all back in. I think Ozzie Albies, his career line speaks for itself. 8-year career, 270 batting average. Has some pop, has some speed, plays in one of the better lineups in all of baseball, which, they get Acuna back, going to be healthy next year. I bet you Olsen takes a step forward. So I think Ozzie Albies is going to be a faller that we're going to get value on. That I think we should be capitalizing on the fact that people are going to look at the season this year, see the numbers, be disappointed by that. And I think we could take advantage of a guy who's only going to be 28 next year that is still a very talented young player in Ozzie Albies.
Yeah, I mean, we're totally going to have that discount double check. You can't see the little motion I did of the, yeah, discount double check. because the injury is totally going to happen, and you're going to need insurance, and that's where Affleck kicks in. Neither are sponsors, I might add, but like honestly, like I look at it, Ozzie Albies still going to be great. You look at his career average alone, and that's worth a third-round pick, honestly, in my opinion. He's not going to fall too far for grace for me because I am going to still pick him up. I think he's still above most second basemen out there. So, like, and I think that there's going to be positive regression for, the Braves team as a whole. So, therefore, I think that Ozzie Albies is going to benefit from that. But coming up next, we got guys coming up like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Luis Robert, Gunnar Henderson. Where and how are we going to be drafting? What's going to be the comfort level? And so much more coming up after this. Explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn about other baseball cities. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball competition stadium cuisine. Luckily on booking.com, you can find the stadium stay that is just right for you. With booking.com, wide variety of choices across US cities. You can go incognito at your baseball rival city. The right stay can make you a fan of US cities, even in baseball rivals. Booking.com, booking.yeah. We're talking to our friends over at FanDuel. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you go check out the latest stats and view the live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets at FanDuel.com. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. And guys, you know what? Football's coming up. It's going to be Thursday tomorrow. We might as well place a same game parlay or even a parlay for the whole weekend. Honestly, I'm rolling out the Jaden Daniels all weekend long. I think picking the over on the rushing yards is all day. Anything over 50-plus rushing yards, I think, is a lock for him. Doing anytime touchdown for him. And then, honestly, slide in a little Terry McLaurin. I think I got a little bit of inspiration after what he did this week. So, bet on them, FanDuel.com. Are you watching Fox Sports and ESPN on your TV all day? Have you had to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or free on the Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Introducing the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast Diamond Club on Subtext, your ultimate fantasy baseball companion. As this season unfolds, because we're done this week, rely on our dynamic content, get ready for the offseason, and get real-time alerts right to your phone, including waiver wire rankings, instant call-up notifications, injury reactions, and a whole lot more. Stay ahead of your fantasy leagues by joining the Diamond Club on Subtext, where your path to victory begins. And plus, we're hitting that offseason, and you're going to want a piece of that. Rankings are coming. Rookie rankings are coming. Draft questions, asking us all this stuff. Who should keep, who should not keep. Check us out. Links in the description below. You get a free 2 weeks, so check us out. All right. That's a lot. So, Dom, thank you. Please take care of that.
Yeah, of course. I'm hopping right here. And I'm super excited to talk about this next guy, actually. Let's talk about some Vladimir Guerrero Jr., right? Honestly, not for me. I'm a big Vladdy guy, and he's another guy that I have in a couple keeper spots. I always knew that Vladdy had the talent. We've seen it before. I think a lot of people were scared off by his best season did take place, right after COVID, where they were still playing in minor league stadiums. The Toronto Blue Jays were, and people really said that. I was always like, listen, that might be his career year, but he's still very, very young and can be successful. You know what? A lot of the naysayers looked right through Vlad's first 31 games this year. He actually only hit .229 with 3 homers, 11 RBIs, 28 strikeouts to 17 walks. Very unusual for Vlad. But after that, it was actually pretty much since May 1st. He's been, if not not the best. Ohtani has been, the best hitter in baseball. But, Vlad's been right up there, with the best, to be honest. And going to give you those numbers since May 1st through yesterday. Vladdy has 27 homers, 89 RBIs, 86 runs. That's over his last 123 games, and he's hit .348 over that time. Has even chipped in a couple of steals as well. I think going forward, I think into next season for sure, Vladdy's the number one first baseman. I don't see even anyone else being like that close to him. I think Olsen and Alonso had bad years. Freddie Freeman's getting a little bit older, and Vlad this year was coming off the board as the 24th overall bat, 27th pick overall. I think he climbs his way into the end of the first round. I think he takes that spot that Freddie Freeman used to hold, and I think that's a good comp because they both can chip in a few steals in any given season. They both hit for a really good batting average. The power, is 30 plus home runs. In a good year with the Toronto Blue Jays, Vladdy could give you 100 RBIs and 100 runs. So I think that's my future comp for Vlad. I think he's going to be a Freddie Freeman type, going to be a staple in the end of the first round there.
Yeah. I like the Freddie Freeman comp, but there's just not enough team around him to really supplant him, in my opinion. Like, Vlad's probably going to be more like an 85 to 90 runs and ribby kind of guy, but the home runs are going to be there, which aren't there for Freddie. But the elite batting average isn't also going to be there. He might hit like 275, 280, whereas Freddie will hit 300. He's capped in 300, in my opinion. But I like Vlad. Definitely a second round pick. Pretty much same value as last year, but a little bit more confidence behind that pick this year. And I think that the Blue Jays as a whole should be better, or could possibly end up on a different team just basically because the whole team is disheveled. So
can I hop back in? I'm sorry. I do just want to say this. The reason that I think that I'm going to switch them is because I think they're both going in different directions. And even if you look at the stats this year, Vladimir in a year that the Blue Jays were really bad, 97 runs, 100 RBI. I think the counting stats are there. And if I remember correctly, I know Freddie. I don't even think Freddie's at 300 this year. If I remember correctly,
283.
He's somebody that I don't have on too many teams. Yeah. And then how's the count? The counting stats are probably still good because he plays for the Dodgers, right? Yeah, 89 RBIs, 81 runs. So I do kind of feel they are going different ways in their careers.
I could see that. I mean, honestly, like here's the thing though, right? Like, so normally it would scare me away for like Freeman, like the same thing that like we kind of see for Goldschmidt, and I haven't seen that yet, right? Like, so like if we go and look at his bat speed and stuff, well, the bat speed is actually down, but everything else is pretty much up. And that's kind of the key part. Now, if we keep seeing the bat speed come down, it's going to be one of those things. I got to kind of see what he does in the offseason before I say, hey, I'm ready to brace it. But it could explain some things. But the dude is such a good bat. It's just going to be hard to supplant. There's guaranteed versus a mixed bag of tricks in terms of Vlad and that. But it's close. But let's move on. I think we spent enough time.
I do want to preface, though, that I do love Freddie Freeman. I still think he's a solid second-round pick next year. I just do want to say that. I'm not hating on Freddie at all. I still think he's great, just getting a little bit older and just moving down a little bit for me.
Yeah, I hear you. He's hitting that magic 35 number next year, so it's going to be interesting. But let's move on to Luis Robert, somebody that is honestly a bust for this podcast because we've had him pretty high in all our rankings. We'll take that one. I mean, but you know what, though? He was riddled with injuries and things like this, and the thing is, though, like, I'm not going to hesitate drafting him next year. This is just my personal opinion. Dom might disagree, but the way I'm looking at it is there's some pros and cons out of this season. This year, he pretty much just showed that, hey, I am who I am. I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to miss a month. But the thing is, he just hasn't been able to recover for it. And it was a longer injury than we'd all like. He only managed to put up about 375 at bats this year, which was pretty ugly. But there's some positives in this, too. So his pace for home runs was actually pretty much on par, even though, you look at his xWOBA batting average and slug is pretty much down. But he had 2 more stolen bases in that short period of time than he did last year, all with 546 at bats. And his average exit velocity is actually up a whole mile per hour, even though he was hurt this year. The barreling has stayed the same, but the hard hit contact has been down and the launch angle is about the same. So when you break it down side by side of things that he's did well, things are not too far off other than, you look at just pretty much his xWOBA, his batting average and his slug. I feel like the injury just kind of pretty much zapped any kind of like, performance that we could have expected out of Luis Robert. But ultimately, the underlying stats don't scare me away from him. If anything, he's coming at a discount double check next year. And he's going to fall down just based off of ADP and how people's expectations are going into the season. But he's going to be a guy that we're going to be taking advantage of the dip. So like sometimes in the stock market, you buy on the dip. This is going to be it for Luis Robert for me. And I think that we're going to ride that all the way to probably a best value in outfield next year because I guarantee he's drafted as, 16, 17 outfielder off the board versus, 10, 11, 12. and that's going to be a significant discount on him. And him as an OF2, forget about it. Dom, I'm going to give you your time to talk, but after this, because we got Dom's take coming up, and then we got a whole bunch of awesome names that we want to cover. I know we're dragging. We could probably spend 3 hours on this show talking about this, but we'll be right back after this.
Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching for thousands of tickets. With Game Time's Picks curation, makes it easier to save more on sports, concert, comedy, theater, and etc. Game Time has plenty of great features as well as their all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkouts. Their seat views, you get a panoramic view from the actual seat you'll be sitting in the app before you buy. With their lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Matt, and Luis Robert, man, this is a tough one. This is a tough one because I'm a big Luis Robert fan. I think he's a great young, talented baseball player. I agree. I'll be taking Luis Robert next year. I definitely need that discount, though. I need that discount double check big time. Last year, Luis Robert was coming off the board as the 10th outfielder. Pick 31 overall. That's going to be too steep for me this year. Matt, as you said, if I can get him as my outfielder too, I think that's going to be the sweet spot. I'm banking on a Luis Robert trade, though. I just don't think his home is in Chicago anymore. Maybe Chicago, maybe it's the Cubs, but it's definitely not the White Sox. It reminds me of Juan Soto. When Juan Soto had that year where they had traded everybody away, he seemed unmotivated. He had played really bad. That's the vibe I'm getting from Luis Robert. We know the talent's there. The talent just doesn't disappear at 26 years old. I hope he's still that 30-30 guy that can hit for a good batting average, because when you look at Luis Robert's career now, it's 463 games and almost 1,800 at bats, and it's a 268 batting average. He was a guy that I always thought was a 300 hitter. So I will be taking Luis Robert next year. I think the value for him is going to be probably, like we said, an OF2. You'd probably be able to get him, I want to say like the 6th, 7th round. I think that's going to be the sweet spot for me. But let's keep things pushing here. Let's move on to a big time riser. And this is another guy that I definitely have to. I'll give you this one. I was out on Gunnar. I really wasn't taking him. I was Gunnar Henderson, Baltimore Orioles, who we're talking about here. If you didn't catch that, I needed to see one more year. He was a guy that through his first. Hold on, let me do the exact math here, so I'm not fudging it. 184, his first 184 games in the bigs there for Gunnar Henderson. It was a 256 batting average, 193 strikeouts to 72 walks. He did have 32 homers over that time and 11 steals, but 11 steals over 184 games to me wasn't really selling it. I knew the talent was in there, but I just wasn't going to draft him this year. He's proven it. First round pick next year, I think for sure. 37 home runs this year, 21 steals with a 283 batting average for Gunnar Henderson. I think he's going to be an all-star for years to come. At only 23 years old, I think you can fully draft him with confidence going forward, being the anchor of your fantasy baseball team in the first round, and you won't be dissatisfied by that.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm not surprised. I called this, not to take a victory lap, but
no, I'll give you the pat on the back for you, brother. You were definitely in on Gunnar.
Yeah, I kind of felt this was coming. The freshman kind of numbers kind of just said, hey, look, I'm going to take that step forward to this extent. Now, I'm not going to claim that, but these are the kind of picks that we look for in the second, third, fourth round that can elevate your team as a whole to then win a championship, because these are the ones you hit on that end up being first round picks the year before, the next year, and boom, you got them in the third round. You're sitting pretty with, chunk full of cash in your pocket. So Gunnar Henderson was definitely that pick. I have some for this year, but you're gonna have to wait. But anyway, this next guy here, Adley Rutschman of the same team, Baltimore Orioles, was a true disappointment this year. You look at his grand total of stats for this year: 548 at bats. He had 66 runs, 19 bombs, 77 ribs, and hit a whopping 252. Like, it was very disappointing. A true sophomore slump, in my opinion. It just really just did not show. Actually, to be honest, this is junior blues. I forgot he had that many at bats his rookie season, and I don't know what to say here. You look at the underlining stats for him, and you're like, man, it's ugly. Exit velocity is down at 88 miles an hour. The amount he barrels is down about down to 6.4. Even hard hit contact is not elite. And you look at the year before, and you're like, okay, cool. Slug was super high. Average exit velocity is actually about the same. The barreling and hard hit percentage was there. It's actually the same, but the launch angle is down. Way down. It's from 35% to 37%, which is a big difference. And then, you know what? He wasn't chasing, and he was, just being a more efficient player behind the plate. And I'm just like, this is not good for us. And Adley, I just wish I would have paid a little bit more attention to those middle numbers. I could have probably predicted that this was in the realm of possibility. It's in his profile. What's sad about this too is you look at it and you go, okay, it's not even like, okay, we could say, oh, these stats are based off of him not getting as many at bats. He's like every other catcher. No, he's at 548 at bats this year. He played just as much as any outfielder this season. Maybe had like a few extra breaks. This is a full season spread. So what does this tell us? Adley Rutschman isn't the next Buster Posey. Adley Rutschman is kind of more of, he's going to be a really good top 5, top 6, catcher. But what does that mean for fantasy? Pick 150 to 200. He's not going to be a top 100, top 50 player like he was this year. I think, honestly, touching a catcher, this sticks to it. Every catcher pretty much busted this year. They are not worth a top 100 pick, and I'm going to continue to draft like that. The draft method always works. So stay away from him in top 100 next year.
Yeah, Matt, great way to say that. I don't think there's any format of fantasy baseball that I would ever spend, would ever take the number 1 overall catcher. I think the days of the Buster Posies and the Joe Mauers are gone. That's the last time I remember, Matt, taking a catcher that high was Joe Mauer or Buster Posey, but no more of those days. Adley, I don't even think you mentioned this. 92 walks last year, 101 strikeouts this year, taking a huge dip. 101 strikeouts is the same, but 57 walks. It's hard to understand a catcher. At 26 years old, his eye getting worse. I'm not sure what it is. I'm hoping he's hurt, or he's played hurt a lot of this year, and it comes out.
He needs a little Jesus Luzardo action.
Yeah, whatever it may be. I hope Adley gets it right, because he is one of the most talented young players in the game. But for fantasy next year, I'm fully out. I think we got time for one more riser. Let's sneak him in here. Let's talk about Jarren Duran. And Matt, this one's going to be fun to talk about. I know you're a big Duran guy. You finally got me in on him over the years. Mr. Duran has finally taken that step we all, had hoped he could. I just want to read you these numbers because they're beautiful for Mr. Jarren Duran. 155 games played, 651 at-bats, 107 runs, 47 doubles, 14 triples, 21 homers, 75 RBIs, 34 steals, and a 286 batting average. Points league master, Mr. Jarren Duran. And points league, I don't know how he's not a first-round pick next year, as crazy as that might be to say. Just with leading the league with 47 doubles and 14 triples, that's wild to me. This guy's an absolute monster. I think he's a top 10 outfielder next year. Jarren Duran, I got to give it to him, man. I definitely didn't think he was going to break out the way he did this year. After last year, I had confidence, and I was taking him at the end of drafts, sure. But to do this is just, I'm just shocked. I love it. Jarren Duran, taking him next year. Definitely for sure.
So I can get on board in points leagues, him being like a top first 3-round pick. I'm not drafting him in the first round. That's a little rich for my blood. But and this is more for points leagues, first 3 rounds. I'm all about it. Any of those times, how he falls in my rankings will change. But in a roto league or a head-to-head categories league, that's where this kind of profile falls down. This is where I'm not really ready to touch him. He's like a Nico Horner with just a little bit better pop. Nico Horner, 35, 40 stolen bases, bats for average, and has 100 runs and maybe like 60, 70 ribs. That's great. But the what puts him above Nico Horner obviously is, he has 21 home runs. Is that repeatable though? I don't think that's really in his profile. I think it's, 15 to 17, I think is the true number for him, which then puts him right on pace with Nico Horner, which makes him like a 5-6 round pick in roto or head to head. Points league, though, there is a big difference because you look at the doubles are big points, triples are massive points. The walks and strikeouts are significant carry weight in that kind of format, right? Like, even though he struck out a hell of a lot more than he walked, but the doubles and triples definitely kick in for that. Points league master for sure. You said it perfectly. But in roto and head to head, that's where I gotta say, hey, let's pump those brakes. Yeah, he was awesome, but as a grand scheme of things, he's not really actually going to be as big of a contributor as other guys going in around those first 2 rounds, in my opinion.
I know we're running a little bit long. I just do want to hop back in and just say that I think that he's definitely going to be a 2nd-round pick minimum next year. I think for as far as ADP goes, I just, even for roto leagues, I just don't see how he's not with. That's a 4.5 category production. With this last week, if he gets up to 80 RBIs, that's plus RBIs and everywhere. And even the home runs, 20 plus home runs, I'll take that from a guy that's in 286 with 100 runs and 34 steals and at 27, right in the prime of his career. And the counting stats back up the underlying stats pretty much back up everything that he's doing. So I think Jarren Duran is going to be a guy that's going to surprise a lot of people, next year if he hasn't already. But that being said, guys, thank you for watching, listening. Our shout out to our everyday listeners for making us your first listen each and every day. And after you make us your first listen, go watch our boy Sully over at Locked On MLB. Make him your second listen. Covers the league in a different way than we do. More, very interesting. Playoff times coming around. He's going to do a great job covering that. So guys, until next time. So
peace.